questions, but I'm going to hold that to the end. So Pooven, if you just, we're going to welcome our next speaker. And then once we've done that, then I do have some questions for you, which we will ask at the end. All right. Thanks, Pooven. So next I want to introduce, I just want to stop sharing your slides very quickly. So I want to introduce Alistair Adam, and I'm going to put your slides up onto the screen. And really a very warm welcome to our principal at Constantia Primary School. Thank you very much. And just reading your bio, it's so beautiful because we see that you really wanted to follow in your dad's footsteps as a principal himself. And I can only imagine how your dad inspired you as a principal for you to want to walk in his shoes as well. So welcome. And we're really looking forward to hearing from you and your insights around this very important topic today. So I'm going to hand over to you, and then I'm going to start sharing your slides. Okay. Thanks, Alistair.
Can I go ahead? Can you hear me?
Yes. Yes,
okay.
You can. There you go.
Thank you very much for inviting me here today. It is a great honor to be with you. I first of all want to thank Selman Page and his team for all the support and guidance. I also want to extend my thanks to my colleagues at Partners for Possibility in the Leadership Circle 34, in particular our mentor, Nikki Wilson Harris, and my business partner, Werner Christian. It is a real pleasure for me to be with you today to be talking about the strategies school leaders can use to make effective decisions, give direction, and to provide answers to stakeholders during a time of great uncertainty, with particular reference when looking at the procedures at Constantia Primary. Next slide.
Okay, I'm going to move it now, Alistair. Apologies.
Okay.
Sorry, it's just the bandwidth, so it freezes the presentation mode. So if you don't mind, I'm just going to put it up like this if it's okay.
That's fine. I have a few outcomes for this session. Firstly, what are we doing to remain at even keel to lead when we are not certain? What are we doing to manage expectations? What about criticism and judgment? How to deal with criticism and judgment? How to keep focus when the odds are against you? How to reassure the community of positive outcomes post-pandemic? How to maintain a positive energy in the community amidst crisis? And finally, encouraging community building during a pandemic. There remains understandable fear in all communities regarding the imminent return of more learners, many of who have aged parents living in your home with comorbidities and fear possible exposure when child returns from school. Some of our children do themselves, despite their youthfulness, already carry comorbidities. There are 100 practical concerns that we all may have. Globally, we have entered a new paradigm. As we navigate our way through uncharted territory, we are mindful that many of us are filled with fear. We are positive that by God's grace and through teamwork, we will survive this difficult period. Next slide. The question is, what are we doing to remain at even keel?
Can
I continue?
Yes, sorry about that, Alistair. Sorry, we're just having some technical difficulties. I want to just try and make the screen slightly bigger so that everyone can see the slideshow. And then while I do that, I just want to ask, Just another appeal, if everyone can please put their videos off and mute themselves, that would be great, just so that we have no interruptions, and we can all pay beautiful attention as our keynote speakers are speaking. So Alistair, I'm going to let you carry on.
Are you going to move to the next slide? To
Next
the
slide. There we go. Is that one?
Is that one? Yes. Thank you.
Okay.
The question is, what are we doing to remain at even keel to lead when we are not certain? To stay afloat during the pandemic, our SMT had to manage to more change in 5 months than most of us do in years. We had to find meaning in the chaos, offering direction, perspective, and purpose. We therefore had to reclaim our rhythm. Teamwork was then of utmost importance. We are concerned for learners' emotional well-being, and when schools reopened, we worked closely with staff on how to discuss the news and address the inevitable uncertainties. Our school management's approach to embrace change and to put structures in place to secure the safety of staff and learners. The health and safety protocols were strictly followed. The impact of the pandemic resulted in redefined roles of all stakeholders. An orientation plan was developed to orientate our teachers and learners on COVID-19 safety. An outside provider, service provider, professional emergency care was then consulted to train all our staff. We had to establish a COVID-19 safety committee, followed with a health and safety plan. The staff had to prepare workbooks for all learners. The learners had the extra responsibility to continue with schoolwork at home, and parents had to assist learners with the curriculum at home. Teachers, on their hand, had to master the online teaching tools to support the learners and parents. And we had to continue with our feeding scheme to support our needy families. Now, these days, it feels like our rhythm is off. It is difficult for us to feel grounded when our schedule and process is completely altered. We are doubly challenged because we feel as uncertain about the future as anyone, but we don't always feel comfortable with expressing feelings of doubt or fear with employees. It is then expected of us to be the pillar of strength and for our staff, even as the ground shifts beneath our feet. If you are feeling out of control or afraid, the best thing to do is stop, take a breath, and challenge your own thinking to make sure that you are about to say to people is not only authentic, but also intentional. It can be tempting to allow the swirl of change or things outside our control overwhelm us, but it is a better strategy to step back, compose ourselves, find our center, and lead from a vantage point that we recognize and count on. But the pandemic is real. We overcame adversity to succeed with our team, only after acknowledging that we didn't have all the answers and therefore patiently waiting on guidance from WCED and DBE. Instead of wasting time, resources, and our collective brain power dwelling on those factors outside our control, we shifted to focus on those areas where we could control and influence. During times of adversity, it can feel like you are losing your way. When that feeling comes, remember that it's no accident that you came to be in the leadership role you are in today. Remember what transformed you into your leadership self. Then focus on those areas you can influence over time. This is the time we need to reassess our values and priorities while staying objective. When the riptide of change pulls you out, you can find your center and come back to where you know you need to be as a person. But you can't do this alone. We need our staff and all stakeholders. They help us identify, refine, and honor those core values that characterize and drive our work. Next slide, please. What are we doing to manage expectations? The uncertainty that revolved at the start of the pandemic impacted heavily on our families, and the concern whether our learners will be safe at home or whether they will have a meal during that time. How will we continue with curriculum work whilst the learners are at home? This kept us going forward in finding solutions. We accommodate for learners from the Constantia surrounding farming areas, Westlake, Hout Bay, Philippi, Khayelitsha, informal settlements, to name a few. Our learners mostly benefit from the Peninsula Feeding Scheme. We continue to reach out to other organizations like the Lunchbox Fund and Constantia Can, who assisted us in providing food parcels and started with soup kitchens within the communities, as it was not possible for them to collect food at our school during the lockdown period. Our vegetable garden, in partnership with the Shoprite Checkers Group, also contributed to providing during the peak of the pandemic. We at Constantia Primary are addressing the legacy of underdevelopment and tackle the challenges of inequality and poverty. We simply don't have the resources that many other schools have. We aim to improve educational outcomes, particularly in reading, writing, and numeracy. We therefore seek to address the underlying reasons for poor educational outcomes. We must do better than simply acknowledge the fundamental right of every child to quality education. It is our collective responsibility to deliver it. We initiate processes to ensure that learners learn in the best possible ways and that school-based assessment, both formal and informal, is used to improve teaching and learning. We continue in providing the necessary workbooks and support to our learners in the form of WhatsApp groups and other platforms in providing supplementary materials. Our head of departments also grasped the opportunity to teach online on African Teen Geeks and Worksheet Cloud, and therefore also assisted the staff members to master the digital platform. The pandemic really exposed a lot of inequities in education, but also a lot of opportunities. Our focus is not just on supporting and educating the learners during this crisis, but we are also concerned that for their teachers' well-being. We limited the volume of communications passed on to our teachers in order to consolidate information into a more digestive form and allow teachers to focus on learners and on their own well-being. Staff is aware of the available online departmental wellness platforms. If our teachers are not in the right space, they are not going to be in the great shape in front of our learners. We therefore needed to prioritize our teachers and make sure that they feel supported and happy too. Next slide. What about criticism and judgment? How do we deal with criticism and judgment? For most decisions, multiple ethical values and principles are relevant to reflections about the process. This is likely to generate some disagreement because different people may weigh the values differently. Some may prioritize equality, while others might put emphasis on best outcomes or prioritization of the worst off. For this reason, it is imperative that the different values be weighed and applied to specific allocation issues using a fair process. A fair process must promote certain ethical values. In a transparent process, the decisions and their justifications should be made available. This means that everyone should be informed about the criteria guiding the decisions. When we look at inclusiveness, those if affected by allocation decisions should be able to exert at least some influence over the decision-making process as well as the decision itself. This also means that decisions should be open to challenge and potentially revisable. Decisions should be consistent so that all staff are treated in the same way. This means that favoritism is not appropriate. Those making decisions must be accountable for the decisions. That is, they should justify their decisions and be held responsible for them. A fair process means that individuals should not make decisions, rather that everyone should be involved. However, it may also be valuable because a fair system stimulates solidarity and trust, which are vital to the successful and sustained collective response necessary for dealing effectively with any challenge. Next slide. How to keep focus even when odds are against you. It's tough to see the light at the end of the tunnel when it seems that all the odds are stacked against you. Try not to look at negative circumstances as overwhelming and unchangeable. Instead, break up obstacles into smaller parts that you can handle one at a time, and develop strategies to solve specific challenges one by one. Hold yourself accountable and commit to making the changes your goals require. Work on developing a resilient, positive outlook and take steps every day to achieve success. Next slide. How to reassure the community of positive outcomes post-pandemic. Clear communication to all stakeholders is of utmost importance. Emphasis must be on the standard operating procedures. Know the latest facts. Understand basic information about the coronavirus disease, including its symptoms, complications, how it is transmitted, and how to prevent transmission. Stay informed about COVID-19 through reputable sources such as the National Health Ministry advisories. Be aware of fake news, information or myth that may circulate by word of mouth or online. Recognize the symptoms of COVID-19, coughing, fever, shortness of breath in your child, and seek medical advice by first calling your health facility or provider and then take your child in if advised. Remember that the symptoms of COVID-19, such as a cough or fever, can be similar to those of the flu or a common cold, which are not a lot more common. If your child is sick, keep them home from school and notify the school of your child's absence and symptoms. Request reading and assignments so that learners can continue learning while at home. Explain to your child what is happening in simple words and reassure them that they are safe. Next slide. How to maintain a positive energy in the community amidst the crisis. We focus on 5 practices to maintain a positive outlook. Having a sense of gratitude. There are still things to be thankful for. For those who have a job, be thankful for that. For those who don't, that they have people around them who care for them. There are many other things to be thankful for. An awareness of the good things in the sense of gratitude. The second thing that has proven very important for us being basic faith practices, thinking about key verses that have been very important to you in your own faith journey, gathering with a friend or two to talk about faith and meeting challenges these days. Any kind of faith practice really helps center and strengthen one. The third would be would be to trying to maintain a rhythm or a routine each day. When we help others, find the help of others. The faith practice that is so critical is not simply an awareness of God's love for you, but trying to keep that love away to share it with others. So I think, what what practical things can we do to help people around me? Stop and smell the flowers. The last thing I'd say in terms of filling our spiritual glass is some sense of creation around us. Whether it's looking out at the field and noticing the trees beginning to bud, or if it's simply a pet that you have, a dog or a cat that you love spending time with, you can really fill you up and give you a hopeful sense about the day. Next slide. Encouraging community building during the pandemic. While communities and schools are mobilizing and implementing public health protocols around COVID-19, compassionate leadership in the face of the outbreak is also critical to ensure communities feel supported. Preventative measures often disrupt routines and contribute to growing unease, especially as schools are a consistent source of support and security in many communities. Constantia Primary's productive practices for education in the times of emergency ensure that learners feel secure, safe, and have a clear sense of belonging so that they can learn. Teachers and families need to be in good communication. If a school closes, teachers need to often find ways to continue relationships with children and families. Both focus on the continued community building and other forms of learning. We considered virtual spaces as a possible option. Children need to learn about COVID-19 in age-appropriate ways so that they can understand the reasons for which schools were closed and their learning has shifted. Secrecy and the lack of knowledge can drive fear. Communities and families that are directly impacted by the virus may need emotional support as well. We should ensure that implemented practices and policies do not excessively penalize or marginalize those directly affected. Also consider providing mental health support to assist children and families in understanding and coping with fear and uncertainty. In my closing, I just want to state that resiliency isn't a consolation prize we earn for making it through hard times. It is awareness as a result of facing challenges. This year is difficult and will continue throwing hardships our way. The hope is after this crisis, we will stand as better leaders, employees, and citizens. We also acknowledge that nothing is cast in stone and there is always room for improvement. I thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Alistair. Thank you for sharing your strategy with us. Toko, I see you've unmuted. I'm just keen on, is there something you'd like to ask, Alistair?
Hello?
Maybe not. I don't know if my technical support can just help Toko mute herself. Thank you. So I just want to thank Alistair again for sharing his strategy on some of the key components that he uses for his school. And I think what was very clear from all the speakers is that the element of communication came out so strongly from all three of our keynote speakers, and also just being transparent with information that is being applied, but not only just around the transparencies, but also understanding very much how roles have been redefined during this time, and one needs to really look closer to the role that they represent within the school environment. Alistair, I love what you said in terms of, you know, the awareness of teachers and the well-being of teachers, which I think is so important, and just having that and Professor Jensen also spoke about how, as a principal, just reaching out to parents creates that sense of humanity and that connection. So really appreciated that. I see we do have, we had a question during that time, and I see that both our last speakers spoke about faith. And we had Brian Wilson, who did ask with regards to, you know, acknowledging, you know, God as comfort and friend. And, you know, what does this mean for people that might practice atheism? And I mean, in terms of that, both our last speakers did speak about faith, but really along the lines of leadership, you know, it's everybody will represent in a way where there is a level of comfort and strength in how they present themselves, and not specific to any beliefs or anything that is necessarily endorsed by the School Leadership Forum per se. So we really invite everybody's thought process and opinions into the arena to be able to share it and take the value that you need to take from it. So I hope that answers your question on that, Brian. If there's any other questions or anybody would like to say anything, you're welcome to raise your hand. But thank you again. Thank you, Alistair. I can't see anybody's hands raised at the moment. Okay. So I'm just going to stop sharing. We're going to put up a link into the chat. I just really want to thank everyone for joining us this afternoon. I think it was really valuable to hear both from the professor and from Proven from the education department, and also from Alistair, who is a principal who's at the forefront of the pandemic managing a school during this time, and really just sharing some of the strategies and best practice that's working for him. So I'm just going to just check if we have any more questions. I don't see that we do, but if you do have questions, you're welcome to put it in the chat. Even if we don't get to necessarily answer it this afternoon, what we will do is we will definitely position those questions to Proven and Alistair and send it through to them, and then broadcast it when we communicate via our email. So I don't know from Proven and Alistair if there's any last comments from the both of you based on any of the chat or anything before we go towards the close.
No, it's difficult during this time that we are experiencing, but we just need to be focused on what we need to achieve. And our core goal is to ensure that our children achieve what is needed for the academic year, and we make a difference in the lives of our child. Thank you.